Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I am your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited to have a very special guest on. It is Karin Morris, and she is the Senior Vice President of Community Impact for the Texas Rangers Baseball Foundation. So they've actually, yes, they're world champions, but they've actually been having a gala go on for a few years that's right on Globe Life Field called the TEX Gala. And it's held, every April near the start of the baseball season. So, we're really excited to have this really special guest and kind of talk about a special, unique experience for the defending world champion Texas Rangers. So with that, Karin, welcome. And we're so excited to have you on as a guest today.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be able to join you and talk about our event and also talk about being world champs. It doesn't get old. Definitely something we love to hear.
Especially when it's the first time, and this is your all's first World Series championship, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's correct. So I have been with the club for 21 years. And so back in 10 and 11, we were in the World Series and we didn't win then. And I was pregnant with my now 12-year-old in 2011. So I used to look at him and I always said this is a real life representation of how long it's been since we went to the World Series. So thankfully he's thrilled that I no longer have to say that. And we did actually win the World Series.
Well, congratulations on that. And, I one of the reasons I wanted to have you all on today is you all do such tremendous work. And I think a lot of people have this, perception, real or not, that yes, sports teams are a very big part of the community, but people don't really realize that they can make impacts far beyond what they do on the field. And, the fact that there is a Texas Rangers Baseball Foundation. So can you share a little bit about what the mission of that is?
Sure. So our foundation started in 1991. We are focused in the areas we feel we can be the most authentic and can be the most impactful. And so we focus very much on youth baseball and softball and access to youth baseball and softball, be that in underserved communities or for those that, are Miracle League partners that maybe have social or emotional or physical limitations, and making sure that individuals have access to baseball and softball. We focus on health and wellness, obviously as a sports team. We can speak about health and wellness and the importance of fitness, but really when we're talking to kids, it comes authentically to them. They want to hear about a sports team. And so we really do a lot of school-based programs in that space. We work in education, so be that through tuition support and scholarships or leadership development and school-based programming. And then we obviously spend a lot of time, we're in Texas, so we support military and first responders and their families. And that, comes through in the form of grants, or in programs. Our most significant programming is we run a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year facility in West Dallas where we offer free baseball and softball instruction for about 10,000 to 15,000 kids a year. And they come from all walks of life, but they may be their first time touching a baseball or they're going to college to play it. But our goal is to create major league citizens. And that's really probably the biggest example of who we are and what we do.
I love that phrase, major league citizens. That really kind of, I think, hits the nail on the head. And also, can you share a little bit about within that mission, because of all the programs to get people, children, especially at-risk children, to be, involved in athletics and sports. How does that help? How do you all work kind of in concert with the main baseball club between the foundation to get the players and other members of the Texas Rangers to be involved within the community?
We are really blessed in the sense that our ownership group and our senior leadership believe very strongly in being responsible corporate citizens and community citizens. Chris Young, who's the general manager of the baseball team, he grew up in this community, he played in this community, and he and his wife are exceptionally philanthropic on their own, but believe in making sure that we're bringing in players out of that same culture and that same fiber. And so I can kind of give an example of one of our players, for example, Marcus Simeon, who, for lack of a better term, sort of our captain. Marcus and his wife are really involved in what we do and believe very strongly in what we do. So they were out at our youth academy and saw the kids at summer camp, at baseball and softball programming, and, asked us about their nutrition. They were both college athletes and they felt like, nutrition was such a key part of their growth. So they decided to help us fund every Friday during summer, kids left with a 10-pound box of produce and vegetables and dairy and meat so that they would leave and eat something healthier than maybe just going to the gas station and grabbing chips. And it really instilled this kind of sense of these kids would just be eating the strawberries as they were leaving out of the produce box. And so you kind of, that one real life example. And then that same player We win the World Series. Marcus is third in the MVP voting. And 10 days later, he's out at our turkey distribution at our academy, helping us hand out 300 turkeys and meals. And does he have to do that? Absolutely not. But that's kind of the type of character they are. And that manifests itself in different ways with the players and senior leadership. But it truly is a partnership. We look at our organization in a sense as a three-legged stool, where the part of that stool is the team, right? The team performance. And if we're winning or losing, the other part is who we are when you come to a game. Do you like the game presentation? How's the concessions? Are the ticket sales good? Do you have a good time when you're at the game? And then that third part is really that community part of who we are as an institution, because we're going to have bad seasons too. And so you want people to feel good about coming to the games, whether or not we're winning or losing. And baseball is a long season, so you really have to get people to feel invested in your organization. And we need to thank that community because it's a long season. We represent a 5-state territory, so we give to a 5-state territory, and we feel very strongly that it's part of a fabric of who sports teams should be.
So talk a little bit about, because I know that you all do quite a bit in North Texas, but I'm glad you brought up, that you support several other states around it. Talk a little bit about, the opportunities and also maybe some of the challenges of, trying to impact communities on a regional level, especially because, you've got 5 states, they've got different laws, they've got different regulations and different rules. How does the organization go about doing that?
I think the hardest part about it is I want to say yes to everything when we receive grant applications. I hate telling people no. But what we try to do is we operate programs and we're in schools in the DFW area. But the reality is we can't necessarily operate programs in Oklahoma or operate programs in Louisiana. And so more of what we do there is that financial grant. So one area that we feel very passionate about is baseball and softball, obviously, but we understand that cities, school districts, youth organizations, the economy isn't always kind to youth sports. And when cities are being hit with budget cuts or shortfalls, or school districts, we want to make sure that baseball and softball experience is enhanced. So we have a grant program, for example, that gives across our 5-state territory. So we've been running the grant program since I think 12, give it out over, I think, $1.5 million to probably 200 different organizations across the regions. And it's fun, you get these applications, and we made a grant in a town in Louisiana that I think has like maybe 300 kids in the high school, maybe 500 people total in the town, but an impact from a grant to them is so significant, where maybe in a big city, a $10,000 grant would just go into a capital campaign or something along those lines. But you give $10,000 to a small town and allow for them to say, hey, the Rangers recognize us, they see us. And in some cases, we get to visit those towns, which is incredible. And it just really makes an impact on their whole ability to fundraise, but also just the sense that they are seen by a professional sports organization.
Well, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think a lot of people are like, and I think a lot of folks, especially when they're applying to grants for an organization like yours, they think, oh, I'm not big enough, or my organization's too small. And I'm really glad that you said, a small 5-figure amount may not go far in a big city like Dallas or Austin, but it can go far in a much smaller town. So I'm really glad to hear that your criteria really allows you all to really impact communities, both large and small.
Yeah, it's important. I think, obviously we support the big organizations as well, but allowing these organizations, these smaller ones, sometimes they just also need a voice. We had a Miracle League partner in East Texas, and they were trying to fundraise to build a Miracle League field. And for them, they knew that if they could, do a PR event that said the Rangers supported it, well, that would help kind of then snowball the effect of fundraising with other partners, where we weren't going to be able to fund the whole field, but maybe by us bringing attention to it, then they could get creative and go work within their community and find other funders.
That's really great. And it's almost like you all are planting the seed for certain people. So it's,
Absolutely.
so that the tree grows and there's all these little branches that, don't start in the sapling, but they wind up there. I think that's a really good way of approaching it, that you're really planting the seeds for a lot of folks to really be able to expand. And you're a part of you're a part of an ensemble in a lot of ways with that. And that there's all, it takes a village, and, you're doing your part in the village. I think that's really great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I think, there's incredible sports foundations across the country that operate this way. And I think it's not just about, bringing people to the game and giving them tickets. I think that's important, and we love being able to provide that opportunity, but it's finding out those organizations that are doing great work, because we can only do so much, but there are so many organizations that do great work. And I think if anything we learned from both COVID and sort of the winter storms that we had in Texas, is that let's find those organizations that are the boots on the ground. And if we can't do it ourselves, like let's find those great people that are the boots on the ground and get them the funds to make the impact immediately versus trying to recreate the wheel of something.
Okay, that's awesome. And before we go and talk about the TEX Gala, I want to ask you something because one, you speak really passionately and really well about the organization. And two, I don't get to talk to people every day that have been with an organization for 2+ decades. So talk a little bit about how you initially got involved with the organization and the passion that keeps you staying there for 2 decades, because that's really a remarkable thing that I don't run into every day. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I went about it in a very non-traditional way. So I worked in baseball as in college, but I'm the daughter of a football coach. I was an only child, so if you imagine the movie Remember the Titans, that's sort of how I
Yes.
was raised. I was on the sidelines charting plays and always wanted to work in sports, but I didn't really know the pathway that I wanted to work. So in college, I was studying in Spain and thought, I want to be in international business and travel the world. And then I quickly realized like I didn't really want to do that. And so I got an internship with the Milwaukee Brewers. I was at Marquette in Milwaukee and loved working at a baseball team. I love the idea, that we were part of something that, was that people just love, that people want to come to the games and watch the games. And you're part of this and you have that competitive spirit. You don't actually aren't doing the sport, but you have that competitive spirit in terms of being around something that, isn't the same every day. So I applied to work at the Rangers in multiple ways, but there weren't really as a position that was a fit to me. So I met with a great mentor, and he suggested, "Well, what's your niche? Like, what is your different? What's your unique quality that you can bring to the Rangers?" I mean, it sounds a little crazy when I say it, but I'm that Irish Catholic girl from Wisconsin that speaks fluent Spanish and had studied a lot about multicultural marketing. And at the time, so this was back in '03, the Rangers had a substantial number of Latino stars, but didn't really have any marketing that was in Spanish. And so I pitched them and creating those programs and letting me take the lead on it. And what that sort of evolved into is what I realized most of what I was doing was grassroots. I was in the community, I was working programs in the community. And while it was marketing the team, it was really getting a better sense of who the community was. And so as our organization evolved, our foundation at the time was a little bit more like a United Way, where we were kind of doing anything a corporate partner wanted us to. And Nolan Ryan came on board as our president in 2008 and really wanted to hone in that focus and really make the foundation what it now has become today. And I was at the time running the Spanish language marketing department, but also moonlighting as a fundraising event manager for the foundation. And they asked if I wanted to become the executive director and really reformulate it. And so I did. And I think, we went through a lot. I mean, from 2008 to 2010, we had layoffs. We were sold and like we were auctioned off on the auction steps. We went through bankruptcy. And since our new ownership group has taken over, our foundation has just evolved so substantially. The investment and care that they have and one thing, for example, when we built this facility in West Dallas, we knew that we wanted to make sure the community knew that we were there for perpetuity. And so our ownership and leadership and donors entrusted enough in the foundation to build out an endowment. So we have about a 22, $23 million endowment that really protects us in the sense that we're able to offset all of our operating expenses. We're able to support our academy and don't have to worry about lockouts and pandemics and not having fans. We can still operate. And so I think because they've shown such a commitment, and it's not, we have the belief of our leadership and our ownership group that you feel supported. And I also have an incredible team that works for me. We're family. I mean, and when you work 81 home games and all those things, you're with each other a lot. And so I'm blessed to have a group of people that make it incredibly fun to come to work every day. And then you do have those years like this year with the World Series when you're working for a team. I always tell people like if you work for Coke, and I love Diet Coke, so if the Diet Coke tastes weird, you're gonna stop the presses and you're gonna figure out why Diet Coke tastes weird and you're gonna fix it. If you're working for a sports team, you can't control what happens in between those lines once the season starts. They're human beings. They could get hurt. They could not have a good year. You can't control it, but you still have to do your job and have success regardless. And it's kind of fun and it's challenging in those down years when fans aren't interested, but then you also get the highs. So that all to say, I really do love what I do. And I think being able to bring the Rangers and bring what we do into the community and change people's lives and see we've had over the past 3 years, over 100 kids go on to play college baseball and softball from our academy. And many of those kids are the first in their families to go to college. So when you see like you're changing generations of families, it makes all like the bad days or the fundraising no's a lot easier.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad you mentioned, because, you all are the defending world champions. Even you all get told, no, we can't right now. And it
Right.
doesn't, I'm really glad that you brought that humility in because people are like, you're all literally on top of the world. And, even when you're on top of the world, not, it's not that everyone doesn't want to help, but they may not, the timing may be off, as an
Exactly,
example of
exactly.
that.
We really challenge our team to be in the right spot to maximize opportunities where we could this year. And because this is that once in a lifetime opportunity. And as we look to next year, the same thing, but that doesn't mean everyone just writing us checks incessantly, like, oh, here's more money to spend. We also realize they just spent a lot of money on playoff tickets. So
That's true too. They gave it a whole other way.
right.
So, that's actually a good segue to my next question. We touched upon this at the top of the show, and that is, with the Texas Rangers being World Series champions for the first time, how are you at the foundation using this? Because this really is at least for right now, I'm hoping it becomes an annual moment, but for right now, it's a once in a lifetime moment, to draw more donors to the TEX Gala and to your signature fundraising event.
So, we started off really with it in the postseason. So when we were playing the Astros, we knew that we had an opportunity to entertain donors and bring them to the playoffs in a sense because it was just a drive or a short flight. So really finding those key donors that that like to be close to this team and like to have those unique experiences. So inviting those donors into at that space, and then bringing some of them actually to Arizona with us so that they could be, in that space and in that vein and have that experience. And then it was really being timely with engaging with the donors during the season. Making sure, even everything from our 50-50 raffle to, to just talking with donors at the playoff games. We traditionally launch our gala on sale, in the off season, kind of while the season's still in memory of individuals. So we're still kind of top of mind. And we sort of escalated that this year and made sure that, there were table tents in the suites during the playoffs, because if they were at a game and they were paying for a suite, the likelihood is they have the disposable income to come to an event. And so we actually sold tables to people side like that we've never heard from before. And by luck, we made sure our save the dates hit mailboxes the day after, the Monday following the parade. The parade was on a Friday, and that Monday the invites. And we really did sell tables to people that we think were just fans. And we think we'll see a little bit more of that. But it's also just reminding them of who we are and what we do. So we do have new donors. We have individuals who are not fans of the Rangers who maybe haven't heard of us before and haven't either heard of the TEX Gala or heard about what we do. So trying to make sure that we're following up with those new individuals and telling them the story as well, not just the Brooks and Dunn and it's at the field and the Rangers are there, but here's what we do and where the funds go.
Absolutely. Well, and I love how you used other things within the organization to really kind of tee up. I know that's a different sport, but tee up tee up donors to really be involved with the event. You mentioned something in there, and a lot of organizations do ask me about this from time to time, that because you're the state of Texas baseball team, you do have donors from other markets. What advice would you give to somebody who basically works on a regional or a national level in terms of connecting with donors outside of kind of where your own backyard is?
I think the biggest thing is finding what their passion points are and finding out, we have some donors that, really like that behind the scenes access and they want to feel like they're in the know. If it's, that they're on this field for batting practice, or if it's that they want to know, they just want to talk to the GM or, bring. And then we have others that maybe don't even care about the baseball side of it, but they care more about our programming. And so making sure that we're inviting them to, our turkey distributions or our holiday parties with our kids. So I think regardless of where that donor is, it's finding that touch point. And then in some ways it's taking that additional effort to go see them. So if it's, making that trip up to spend some time with them, because I think everyone understands everyone's time is valuable. So showing that person that you want to spend time with them, I think just shows that you value them. And even if it's a quick trip or it costs some money, but it makes it worthwhile. Or you bring the experience to them. We actually have, a long-term, he was mayor of Arlington for two terms, and actually helped build the ballpark across the street and help the Rangers stay here. Like was part of the referendum and the bond that was voted to keep the Rangers here when we built the old ballpark. And we named a scholarship program after him in his honor. And he and his wife actually for the past 25 years have shepherded these scholars through their internship years and their senior year of high school. And and really helped build out this program. Well, he had fallen ill during the World Series, so he wasn't able to come out to the game. So Friday we drove the World Series trophy over to his house when the scholars were there, knock on the door and surprise him with the trophy so he could take pictures. And I think obviously not everyone has a World Series trophy, but that little instant, then he's obviously we wanted to do that for him because we love and care for the family, but he's, posting on social or he's telling friends, and then folks see that we value him. We value what he's provided to us. And I think that's something you can find your own way, your unique way to showing your donors that you value them.
Well, one unique thing that you talked about, and I don't think we've ever even talked about this, on the show before with any of the previous episodes, is you were talking about how you've got, you were talking about various types of events and knowing your donors. But what I liked was you were going to invite them to a specific event, not every single event that you host, because you were talking about how time is really valuable. So I really like how you kind of walk through and explain to people that, you want to have presence of mind, but you don't want to be on their mind all the time because that's, that law of diminishing returns coming in. So I just thought that was such a strategic, smart way of explaining it and just, connecting with your donors in ways that most connect with them.
Yeah, I agree. What we don't want to be the people that they only hear from us when we're asking them for money to buy a table or buy a ticket. Then we become like just a sales tool to them. And so it's reminding them about the programmatic side of it, but also understanding that, okay, well, maybe this event isn't worthwhile to reach out to that donor that can invest, $25,000. Well, maybe this event that's like a $200 ticket isn't probably fit for them. Like, so let's just not bother them with it. And then shift our attention on them to something that makes more sense for them.
Absolutely. Well, that's really, I think that's just really smart and really effective. And, while we're on the subject of unique elements, one thing I like about the tech scale, and I've kind of looked back over the years on the dates, is that they're on a different day of the week, which, talk a little bit about how that kind of helps keep an event fresh and exciting and fun for your donors. Just that whole, it's going to be on a day and, I like you all enough that I want to be there.
Yeah, so we wanted, when we moved to the new ballpark, we were really adamant we wanted to have it on the field at the new ballpark, that we have this beautiful venue. So let's have it here and have that uniqueness. But that means that we sometimes we fall victim to the schedule. And so we have to have it when we have it. And there's been, we've been on a Thursday, we've been on a Monday, I think we've been on a Friday, not a Friday, maybe a Wednesday. And but prior to moving to this ballpark, we used to have it at a hotel, and it was predominantly on a Sunday. And our players were the focus of the entertainment. They participated in game shows, and it was great, and we did all right. But as we moved here, we really felt like, in talking with our players too, that we needed to pivot and make this less about being a sports fan of the Rangers and more about being a fan of the Rangers Foundation, and have it move. We kind of said moving from the sports pages to the society pages. And that was really a concentrated effort, because as we're looking to raise money, we need to get people in the room that want to be at the event because of the cause, maybe because of the entertainment, and really kind of transition away from just being Rangers fans. It also allowed for us not to go back to the same well, because if we're just going to the suite holders and season ticket holders for event sponsorships, well, there's a limited capacity to that, where the folks that come to our gala now aren't necessarily even suite holders or season ticket holders. They're just fans of what we do, enjoy the event, and have continued to purchase year over year. And I mean, it definitely does provide some challenges in the sense of, well, now this year's on Monday, so we're setting on a Saturday and Sunday, and, you're bringing in staff and labor on weird times. But it also does keep it fresh. And then if you have folks that can't come Thursdays because of kid stuff, well, maybe Monday works better. So, we just kind of roll with it.
That's really good. And that's just, rolling with it is really, that's really one of the key ingredients to any successful event. As is, I loved hearing you say that not everyone who goes is a season ticket holder or a suite holder. And, any interesting or good party, you're going to have a mix of types of folks. And that just gives the whole event an additional layer. And one thing you were talking about is when you're on the field, you try to make it so that people at the TEX Gala who are on the field don't feel like they're on a baseball field or at in a baseball stadium. So how do you all create an intimate environment in a large space such as a stadium?
We really try and work with decor elements and bring in a feel for the event that's different than baseball. So it's not, I say this, but now I think this year's colors do have red and white in them, but it's not, it's not all, Ranger specific. So last year, for example, we had Kenny Chesney as an artist. And we really worked with our agency to create kind of that beach, but kind of cool beach baseball vibe that covered each other. Like there were little elements in both. And we had palm trees and tea lights, and Try to really create this sense of you're at the field, you know it, you're on the grass, but it's not, we move the tables in, move the stage in, and create that intimate sense of, you're in the outfield, but it does feel different. And try to do that. This year our theme with Brooks and Dunn is kind of a midway state farm kind or state fair kind of feel. I've done that in every meeting, a state fair feel. And so you'll see elements from that you would think of from a state fair. So if it's a Ferris wheel, if it's games, and just creating that fun element that's just different. That's that you don't see at a Rangers game, but that that people want to come to an event and have fun. I mean, the reality is you can go to a lot of different events and sit at a table and hear about a charity and eat what you eat and then you leave. But if you create that fun experience, they'll want to come back. And that's really what we've tried to create.
Absolutely. What do you think's been the secret to getting folks to come back year after year? Because it's not like the Texas Rangers are the only sports team that does signature fundraising events throughout Texas or even throughout the city of Dallas. There's quite a few. Where do you think that loyalty comes from that makes people want to come back year after year?
I think it's kind of twofold. One, I think they believe in what we do as a foundation. But two, I hope they would say that they have fun at it and that we understand like there's a capacity to which people want to hear about being asked for money, right? Like they don't want to have 12 live auction items and a cash call, and then we're going to do like a heads or tails, and then we're going to do something else. And so now you have like an hour and a half of asking for money. Because the people that are in there that want to give, you can come up with succinct number of live auction packages, a succinct number of, asks that you make it compelling enough, drive up that bidding for those that want to give, but then allow the other individuals, if they want to give on the silent or whatever that is, because I think at some point there's a little bit of a donor fatigue where you're like, oh my God, what item are they on? Like it just, and
Absolutely
then
true.
yeah, and then obviously then it's like followed up by a musical performance. So hopefully when they're leaving, that last thing that they're leaving with is that fun part of the concert, and they're like, oh yeah, that auction part took no time, and we try to leave them with food. So for example, this past gala, our partners from Whataburger came and brought Whata chicken biscuits. So everyone got honey butter chicken biscuits as they were leaving. So everyone likes food. And everyone likes country music in Texas, and everyone likes a little bit of booze. So mix them all together, and it works out well for fundraising.
I was gonna say, you got a party right there. All that
Yeah.
right there is a party. Now, speaking of a party, the TEX Gala will include a performance by Brooks and Dunn. And I can't think of a guest I've had that's better situated to ask this question than you that I've had on, as a guest on this show. What's a piece of advice you would give to an organization looking to engage with a celebrity or a high profile individual? Because you're not only dealing with you're dealing with talent in different aspects. You're dealing with the athletes who work for the Rangers who you may want to attend that night, but you're also dealing with the logistics and the requirements of a musical performer. So, talk a little bit about, your advice on how to effectively navigate that so they say yes and are comfortable.
Yeah, I'd first tell you that find someone that you trust so that can help you navigate that might know the industry. So the Rangers have a special events company called Rev, and the head of Rev is a friend of mine and a colleague forever, and he helps really navigate the channels with the artist management. We kind of do it together. I give the sad woe is me, we're a foundation. He helps it from a standpoint of this is what they're really saying, and kind of also looking at tour schedules, and he also kind of presents it with a realistic idea of like how much this stuff costs. I think you also probably have to take a step back and look at it and look at your audience. It may not be the artist that you listen to on your playlist as like your favorite song, but what would fit your audience the best, and kind of thinking through that in terms of we've got staff that are all ages, but and our players would probably prefer something that's more geared towards them. But you need to find the artist that has, for us, it was that an artist that have had a long catalog of music. So you have a better likelihood that donors know their songs. So they want to stay and hear their songs. And then one that is kind of, I guess, universally embraced enough that your audience likes them. So what might fit for a different sports team because of their fan base or their audience might be completely different for what we would have. And I think that's where it's sometimes a challenge. Like you kind of almost run out of artists that sit in that vein. But we're really excited about Brooks and Dunn. We know they're gonna be tremendous artists. And, and we've really lucked out. We've had Tim McGraw, Darius Rucker, and Kenny Chesney, and all three have been excellent and great performers and great to work with. And what we really try to do too for them is make it easy on them. I mean, they're a special performance as part of a bigger event. And so we make it easier for their folks. They come in, our production team's excellent and makes it an easy production. The sound's good here. But but we also don't ask too much of them. So we're not making them do like 100 meet and greets and all these signed pictures and all those things, because ultimately we have celebrities in the ballroom. We have the players. So we look at some of our key donors and those title sponsors and that kind of thing, and we make sure that they get that unique experience with the artist. But we're not having it be widespread. We're asking so much. Like this, we understand that there's a limit to what they'll be willing to do.
Thank you for sharing that, and that, their time is valuable, just like your time is valuable. So it's really important to do that, because everyone's going to want to meet them, but, making sure
Right.
to limit that is really just an important thing. So, would you be able to share maybe one or two additional things that people would be able to expect at this year's TEX Gala?
Sure. So obviously, being the World Series champions, we're going to have some pretty special and unique auction items available that we think those diehard Rangers fans or just diehard baseball fans will really want to be at the event to have access to that. The other component to that is, we have an All-Star game that we're hosting this summer. We'll host Major League Baseball's All-Star game this July. So we're lucky in the sense that we'll have some opportunities from that event to really give some fans, some donor, some gala attendees, some really unique experiences that tie into that. And then I think lastly, like I mentioned it with the state fair theme, it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get the Ferris wheel figured out. But it will be, I mean, we always try to find a way to make sure it's fun. And obviously having the players at the event, and having World Series champion players at the event. And this will be, being that it's April 22nd, we'll have 2 homestands before that. And so realistically, this is like their real first time to really engage with fans in that type of setting. So we're excited about it. And we think, we always give it a good time. And I know that our catering team will come up with some amazing ideas to tie into the state fair. So who knows what we might have for some options for food, but it'll be a really fun night.
And Karin touched upon one thing earlier, and that is, for the even if you're not a sports fan with some of those sports packages, what I will say is graduation and Father's Day are not that far behind. So they
Exactly.
make great gifts, once in a lifetime gifts. So, make sure to, give and look at that. And would the auction items be able to be available online for people not in attendance to be able to bid on, or do you all keep it strictly for those who are there?
We give it strictly for those who are there. We have some long-term donors that, if they're not in the room, but we do keep it that way, kind of intentionally so that there is a desire to attend. But then also because there's some restrictions as it relates to MLB and online auctions that we try to keep it for the fans, for the attendees that night. And it makes it a little simple, but also provides that exclusivity so that when you're there, that you're bidding against the people in the room, but then it also encourages people to attend.
Okay, so we're going to end on that because, I can't think of a more fun, better, and unique experience with that. So if you want to buy any of these once in a lifetime experiences, you all need to go to this gala. And, I've seen photos of it before, and I've covered it before, and I've written about it. And it really is a magical evening. And Karin, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. This was really such a wonderful wealth of information. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you so much for your support of not only our event and foundation, but for all nonprofits and events, because it's a challenging job that we all do, but it's worthwhile.
Absolutely. And the TEX Gala, benefiting the Texas Rangers Baseball Foundation, will be held on April 22nd, 2024 at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. For more information, please visit rangers.com/TexGala. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.